house on Blackwood Lane. The rain fell in torrents, turning the world outside into a blur of gray and shadows. The old house on Blackwood Lane creaked and groaned as the storm raged on, its ancient timbers protesting against the onslaught. Inside, Emma sat alone in the dimly lit living room, the flickering light of the fireplace casting eerie shadows on the walls. She had always loved storms, finding comfort in the rhythmic patter of rain against the windows, but tonight felt different. Tonight, the storm seemed alive, whispering secrets she couldn't quite hear. Emma had inherited the house from her grandmother, a woman known in the town for her mysterious ways and cryptic stories. Despite its dilapidated state, Emma had decided to move in, drawn by the charm and history of the place. Her friends had warned her about the house's sinister reputation, but she had dismissed their concerns as mere superstition. After all, she didn't believe in ghosts or curses. But as the night wore on, she found herself questioning that disbelief. The wind howled through the cracks in the walls, and the rain beat against the windows with relentless fury. Emma pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders and tried to focus on the book in her lap, but the words swam before her eyes, refusing to make sense. A sudden, sharp crack of thunder made her jump, and she glanced nervously around the room. The fire flickered and dimmed, casting the room into deeper shadow. A sense of unease settled over her, like a heavy, invisible shroud. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She glanced at the old grandfather clock in the corner. Its pendulum swung slowly, each tick and tock echoing through the silent house. Midnight was approaching. She decided to make herself a cup of tea, hoping the warm drink would soothe her nerves. As she stood in the kitchen, waiting for the kettle to boil, a faint sound reached her ears. It was a soft, almost imperceptible whisper, like the rustling of leaves in the wind. She strained to hear, but the sound faded, swallowed by the storm. She shook her head, trying to dispel the growing sense of dread. It was just the wind, she told herself. Just the wind and her overactive imagination. The kettle whistled, and she poured herself a steaming cup of tea. As she turned to head back to the living room, she caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of her eye. She froze, her heart pounding. Slowly, she turned to face the window. There, framed by the rain-streaked glass, was a figure, dark and indistinct, standing in the yard. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She blinked, and the figure was gone. She hurried to the window and peered out into the darkness, but there was nothing there, only the rain and the night. She tried to convince herself that it was just a trick of the light, but the feeling of being watched persisted, gnawing at the edges of her mind. Back in the living room, she set her tea on the table and curled up on the couch, staring into the dying embers of the fire. She needed to calm down, to stop letting her imagination run wild. But the house seemed to have other plans. The whispers returned, louder now, more insistent. They seemed to be coming from the walls themselves, a chorus of voices just beyond the edge of hearing. Emma's pulse quickened. She stood up, her hands trembling. She had to find the source of the sound, had to prove to herself that it was nothing more than the wind. She moved cautiously through the house, her flashlight casting long, wavering shadows on the walls. The whispers grew louder as she approached the stairs leading to the basement.